The air in the grand ballroom felt like spun gold, shimmering with the laughter of our closest friends and family. Every detail, from the cascades of white roses to the string quartet playing softly in the corner, was exactly as Liam and I had envisioned. It was a perfect day, the kind you only dare to dream about. My heart swelled with a happiness so pure and buoyant it felt as if it could lift me from the floor. Seated at the head table, I squeezed Liam's hand under the pristine white tablecloth, and when he turned to me, his smile was the only thing in the room that outshone the crystal chandeliers. He was my anchor, my quiet strength. Our journey together hadn't been a whirlwind romance, but a slow, beautiful build, a friendship that deepened into a love that felt as natural as breathing. He understood me in a way no one else ever had, and I, him. Today was the celebration of that understanding, a promise made public. But even in the midst of this perfect joy, a small, persistent shadow lurked at the edge of my vision. That shadow had a name. Chloe. Chloe, Liam's younger sister, my new sister-in-law. To the outside world, she was charming, vivacious, and the life of the party. She moved through the room with unpracticed ease, her laughter a little too loud, her gestures a little too grand. She had a way of making every conversation about her, of subtly shifting the spotlight until it found her and stayed there. I had seen it countless times at family dinners and holiday gatherings. An engagement announcement for a cousin would somehow end with Chloe recounting a far more dramatic story about a past relationship. A celebration for her parents' anniversary would devolve into a showcase of her recent career achievements. She wasn't malicious, not in an overt way. She was simply and profoundly addicted to attention. I had tried, truly, to build a bridge. In the early days of my relationship with Liam, I invited her to lunch, asked for her advice on wedding details, gestures I hoped would signal my desire for a real friendship. She would offer opinions, of course, but they were always double-edged. When I showed her a photo of my wedding dress, a simple, elegant A-line gown, she had tilted her head. "It's sweet, Grace," she'd said, the word sweet landing like a consolation prize. I just always imagined Liam with a bride in something more spectacular. But if you love it, that's what matters. She had then, of course, spent the next 10 minutes showing me photos of dresses she would have chosen, each one more ostentatious than the last. Her own dress today was a testament to her need to be seen. It was a pale champagne color, almost white, covered in intricate beading that caught the light with every move she made. It was a beautiful gown, one that would have been perfect for a different event, but at a wedding, it felt like a statement. It was a whisper, a subtle challenge to the woman in actual white. Liam, bless his heart, was blissfully unaware of these undercurrents. He saw his sister as the bubbly, sometimes dramatic but always lovable girl he grew up with. He often missed the nuances, the barbs hidden in compliments, the way she could command a room at someone else's expense. The dinner plates were being cleared, and the clinking of glasses began to ripple through the room, the traditional signal for the speeches to commence. The best man, Liam's childhood friend, Michael, was scheduled to go first, followed by my maid of honor, my sister, Olivia. And then, as was our personal choice, Liam and I would give a joint speech to thank everyone. We had spent weeks on it, weaving our story together, wanting to share our gratitude from a place of unity. Michael stood up, a warm and familiar presence, and tapped the microphone. "Hello, everyone," he began, his voice friendly and confident. The room quieted, a wave of happy anticipation washing over the guests. This was the part of the evening I was looking forward to most, the heartfelt words, the shared memories. But as Michael opened his mouth to continue, another figure rose from a nearby table. It was Chloe. She held a folded piece of paper in her hand and was already walking towards the small stage area, a brilliant, determined smile fixed on her face. She gave Michael a dismissive little wave as if to say, "You can wait." My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't planned. Her name wasn't on the list. I looked at Liam, and for the first time that day, I saw a flicker of confusion and alarm in his eyes. He too knew this was not part of the program. Chloe was making her own program. A wave of awkward silence fell over the ballroom. Michael, who had been poised to deliver his toast, stood frozen by the microphone, one hand still raised. He looked from Chloe to the head table, his expression a mixture of bewilderment and polite disbelief. The string quartet, which had been playing a soft interlude, faltered for a moment, a few discordant notes hanging in the air before they too fell silent. All eyes were on Chloe as she glided onto the stage, her champagne-colored dress seeming to drink in the spotlight she had so brazenly stolen. She reached the microphone and gently, but firmly, took it from Michael's hand. "Don't worry, Mikey," she said into it, her voice echoing through the room, sweet as honey but laced with steel. "I'll be quick. I just have a few things I simply have to say." She gave him a dazzling smile that didn't reach her eyes and patted his arm, a gesture of patronizing dismissal. Michael, a gentleman to his core and clearly not wanting to cause a scene, had no choice but to retreat, casting an apologetic glance in our direction before returning to his seat. My own smile felt like it was carved from ice. Beside me, Liam had gone rigid. His hand, still holding mine, tightened. "What is she doing?" he murmured, his voice low and tight with a dawning anger that I knew he rarely showed. "She's being Chloe," I whispered back, my gaze locked on my sister-in-law. Chloe tapped the microphone again, a theatrical gesture to ensure every single person was paying attention. "For those of you who don't know me," she began, though I suspected very few didn't. "I'm Chloe, Liam's sister. His little sister." She paused, letting the words hang in the air, as if reminding everyone of her lifelong claim on him. "I've known Liam his entire life, obviously. I've seen him through every scraped knee, every terrible haircut, and trust me, there were a few. And every questionable girlfriend." A nervous titter of laughter rippled through the crowd. My stomach clenched. I knew exactly where this was going. This wasn't a speech about Liam and me. This was a speech about Chloe and Liam. "I've always been protective of my big brother," she continued, her voice taking on a pseudo-sentimental tone. "He has such a big, trusting heart, sometimes too trusting. So when he told me he was getting serious about Grace, I have to admit I was a little skeptical. Who was this woman who had captured the attention of my brother, who I was so sure would be a bachelor forever?" She turned her gaze on me, the brilliant smile plastered on her face. Grace was different from the others, quieter, more reserved. I remember thinking, can she really keep up with him? Can she really understand the passion and fire that drives our family? My face burned with humiliation. She was painting me as a meek, insufficient partner in front of everyone we knew and loved. I could feel the curious, pitying glances from some of the guests. I squeezed Liam's hand, a desperate, silent plea. He was already leaning forward, his jaw set, looking like he was about to stand up and intervene. I gave his hand a short, sharp shake, a signal to wait. As much as I wanted him to shut this down, I knew that a public confrontation between siblings at our wedding would be even more disastrous. This was my battle to fight, not his. Chloe, oblivious or perhaps reveling in the tension she was creating, went on. She recounted a long, meandering story about a time she and Liam got lost hiking as teenagers. A story where she was the hero who navigated them back to safety, while Liam was panicking just a little. She told another about how she saved him from a truly dreadful ex-girlfriend by staging an intervention. Story after story, the theme was the same. Chloe as the protector, the guide, the one who knew best. Liam and I were merely supporting characters in the grand drama of her life. "But then," she said, her voice dropping as if sharing a profound secret, "I saw how happy he was. And I realized my job was done. I had guided him through the wilderness of his youth, and now I was handing him over." She raised her glass, not to me, or even to us as a couple, but to Liam alone. "To my brother, Liam. May you always remember who was there for you first. I love you." The speech ended. A scattered, uncertain applause broke the silence. It was shorter than I had feared, but every word had been a precision-guided missile aimed at diminishing my place in Liam's life. She hadn't mentioned me as his partner, as his future, as a source of his happiness. She had framed me as the endpoint of her own heroic journey in his life. She turned, beaming as if she had just delivered the most heartwarming tribute imaginable, and began to walk off the stage. My moment had come. The rage that had been coiling in my gut was now a cold, clear certainty. She had tried to hijack our day, to rewrite our story with her as the protagonist. She had tried to read her speech before me, but I would be the one to have the final word. Before Chloe could fully descend the 2 small steps from the stage, before the scattered and confused applause could completely die out, I pushed my chair back and stood. The movement was deliberate, calm, and it cut through the lingering awkwardness in the room like a knife. A hush fell instantly. Every eye that had been on Chloe now snapped to me. I gave Liam's hand one last reassuring squeeze. His eyes were wide, filled with a mixture of anger at his sister and concern for me. I gave him a small, almost imperceptible nod. "I've got this." I walked towards the stage, my steps measured and even. I was not rushing. I was not storming. I was simply claiming the space that was rightfully mine. I could feel the collective breath of our guests being held. My path took me directly past Chloe, who had stopped at the bottom of the steps, her triumphant smile faltering as she saw me approach. Her eyes, which had been so bright and performative moments before, now held a flicker of uncertainty. She had expected tears or perhaps a quiet, seething resentment from me. She had not expected this. I reached the stage and took the microphone from the stand where Chloe had placed it. It felt cool and solid in my hand, a tool of power she had just misused. I turned to face our friends and family, a sea of faces looking up at me with rapt attention. I took a deep breath, not of nervousness, but of resolve. "Wow," I said, my voice clear and steady, carrying easily through the silent ballroom. I let a small, genuine smile touch my lips. "Thank you, Chloe, for that performance." The word performance hung in the air, gentle but pointed. I didn't say it with malice, but with a simple, observational tone that stripped all the intended sentimentality from Chloe's speech and labeled it for what it was, an act. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Chloe's face tightened. "It takes a lot of courage," I continued, turning my head slightly to look directly at her, "to stand up and talk so much about yourself at someone else's wedding. Really, it's a unique choice." A few sharp intakes of breath were heard. Near the front, I saw my sister Olivia cover her mouth, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and glee. Chloe's face, which had been pale, began to flush a deep, mottled red. I had taken her own weapon, the subtly barbed compliment, and turned it back on her. I turned my attention back to the room. Chloe spoke of Liam's past, of scraped knees and questionable girlfriends, and of her role as his guide. And for that, we are all, I'm sure, grateful. I paused. But a wedding is not about the past. It's not about handing someone over, as if they are a parcel to be delivered. A wedding is about the future. It's about two people choosing, freely and equally, to build a new life together. A life that stands on its own. My gaze found Liam at the head table. The anger in his expression had been replaced by a wave of profound love and pride. He was watching me as if seeing a part of me he had always known was there, but had never seen unleashed. He started to stand, and I gave him a subtle gesture with my free hand, beckoning him to join me. This was always meant to be our speech. Together. As Liam walked to my side, a murmur of approval went through the crowd. This felt right. This felt real. He came and stood beside me, his arm wrapping firmly around my waist. A silent, unshakable statement of unity. He leaned towards the microphone. "And I have never been more certain of the life we are about to build," he said, his voice ringing with conviction as he looked at me. I smiled up at him, then turned back to our guests. "Liam doesn't need a guide anymore," I said, my voice softening. "Because we are partners. We navigate together. Sometimes he is my strength, and sometimes I am his. We don't save each other. We support each other. Love for us isn't about protection or possession. It's about admiration. It's about trust." I then began the speech we had actually written. I spoke of the first time Liam had made me laugh so hard I cried. I spoke of his quiet kindness, the way he would listen without judgment, the way his presence felt like coming home. I spoke of our shared dreams, the little inside jokes, the comfortable silences. I spoke of us. With every word, I was painting a new picture for our guests, overwriting the distorted, self-serving image Chloe had tried to create. I was replacing her narrative of his dependency with our reality of a partnership. The atmosphere in the room had transformed. The awkwardness was gone, replaced by a palpable warmth and emotion. People were smiling. Some were dabbing their eyes. They were not just watching a wedding. They were feeling the truth of a love story. I looked over at Chloe one last time. She was no longer the center of attention. She stood alone, a few feet from the stage, completely frozen. Her face was a mask of disbelief and wounded pride. The spotlight she had craved and so clumsily grabbed was now shining brighter than ever, but it was on Liam and me. And in its glare, she was nothing more than a shadow. When our shared speech concluded, with Liam's arm securely around my waist and my hand resting on his heart, the applause that erupted was not the scattered, uncertain patter that had followed Chloe's monologue. It was a tidal wave. It was a roar of genuine, heartfelt approval and joy that filled every corner of the grand ballroom. It was validation. Our friends and family were not just clapping for a speech. They were cheering for us, for the love they had just seen so beautifully and fiercely defended. My eyes were on Liam, and his were on me. In that moment, with the sound of 100 people celebrating our partnership washing over us, the rest of the world fell away. He leaned in and kissed me, not a polite public peck, but a deep, meaningful kiss that communicated all the pride, love, and gratitude he felt. The applause grew even louder. It was only after we finally turned back to the crowd, our hands now clasped tightly together, that I allowed my gaze to drift towards where Chloe had been standing. She was still there, rooted to the spot near the stage, but she was no longer a performer. The mask of defiant pride had completely shattered. Her face, which had been flushed with anger, was now deathly pale. Her mouth was slightly agape, and her eyes, wide with shock, were welling up with tears she was powerless to stop. She saw me looking. For a brief, terrible second, our eyes met across the room. In her gaze, I saw the raw, crumbling agony of a narcissist who has been so publicly and thoroughly dethroned. She had expected to be the star, or at the very least, a tragic heroine. Instead, she had been rendered irrelevant, a sour footnote in an otherwise joyous day. The tears weren't from remorse or regret for her actions. They were tears of pure, undiluted humiliation. A single tear escaped and traced a glistening path down her cheek. That one tear broke the dam. Her composure completely dissolved. Her lip began to tremble violently. She looked wildly around the room, but she found no sympathetic faces, only the backs of guests who were still applauding us, or the curious, pitying stares of those who had noticed her breakdown. There was nowhere for her to go, no spotlight to find. With a choked, guttural sob that was swallowed by the noise of the room, she turned and fled. It wasn't the elegant glide she had used to approach the stage. It was a clumsy, desperate scramble. She stumbled through the tables, bumping into a waiter's tray and sending a glass crashing to the floor, a sound that went largely unnoticed. She pushed past guests, her head down, her hands covering her face as if to shield herself from the hundreds of eyes she imagined were judging her. I watched her reach the grand ballroom doors, shove one open, and disappear into the hallway beyond, leaving only a wake of bewildered glances behind her. She had tried to have her moment, but in the end, she left crying, just as she deserved. A moment later, Liam's mother, Eleanor, made her way to our table. Her face was a portrait of maternal anguish and embarrassment. "Grace, Liam," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "I am so terribly sorry. I don't know what to say. Her behavior was inexcusable." I reached out and took her hand. It was cold and shaking. "Eleanor, please," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "This is not your fault. Today is a happy day. Let's not allow this to cast any more of a shadow. We have handled it. It's over." Liam nodded in agreement, giving his mother's shoulder a comforting squeeze. "Grace is right, Mom. Don't worry about Chloe. We're going to celebrate." Relief washed over Eleanor's face, though the shame lingered in her eyes. She nodded, gave my hand a grateful squeeze, and retreated to her table, casting one last worried glance at the doors Chloe had disappeared through. The DJ, taking his cue that the speeches were well and truly over, let the final applause fade, and his cheerful voice boomed through the speakers. "And now, if everyone would please turn your attention to the dance floor, our newlyweds, Grace and Liam, will share their first dance." Liam turned to me, his eyes shining. "May I have this dance, my magnificent, brilliant wife?" "You may," I laughed, the last vestiges of tension finally melting away, replaced by pure, unadulterated joy. He led me to the center of the floor. As the opening notes of our song began to play, he pulled me close. The rest of the world, with all its drama and its shadows, ceased to exist. There was only the warmth of his arms, the steady beat of his heart against mine, and the beautiful future that stretched out before us. A future we had just proven we would always defend, together. As Liam led me to the dance floor, the world seemed to shrink until it was only the two of us. The song we had chosen, a soft acoustic melody that had been our song since our third date, enveloped us. He held me close, one hand resting on the small of my back, the other holding mine against his chest. I rested my head on his shoulder, closed my eyes, and breathed in the scent of him, clean, familiar, and safe. The chaotic energy from Chloe's interruption, the adrenaline of my response, it all finally dissipated, leaving behind a profound sense of peace. This was no longer just a dance. It was a reaffirmation. Every slow turn, every step we took together, was a silent vow. It was a promise that we would always be a team, that we would face the world side by side, protecting our shared joy from anyone who sought to diminish it. Liam's hold was firm, protective yet gentle, and as I looked up at him, the love in his eyes was so potent it took my breath away. "You were incredible," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion, his lips brushing against my temple. I have never been prouder of anyone in my entire life. Coming from Liam, a man of quiet, measured words, the declaration felt like a coronation. In that moment, Chloe's stunt became the best wedding gift she could have accidentally given us. The chance to prove, to ourselves and to everyone, the unshakable foundation upon which our marriage was built. The rest of the night unfolded in a blur of pure happiness. Our guests, sensing that the drama was truly over, threw themselves into the celebration with renewed vigor. The dance floor was never empty. Laughter and cheerful music filled the air, completely washing away the memory of the earlier tension. My sister Olivia hugged me fiercely at one point, whispering, "I've never seen anything more epic. You're my hero." Many of Liam's relatives came up to me, offering quiet, heartfelt apologies for Chloe's behavior, and, more importantly, praising my strength and grace under pressure. They didn't see me as the quiet, reserved woman Chloe had tried to paint. They saw me as the strong matriarch of a new family. Neither Chloe nor her parents reappeared. I learned later from Liam's aunt that his father had gone looking for Chloe and found her in the hotel lobby, hysterical and inconsolable. He had taken her home, while Eleanor, torn but loyal to her husband and distraught daughter, had quietly slipped out to join them. There was no grand farewell, just a silent, shame-faced exit. A part of me felt a flicker of pity for the deep insecurity that must fuel Chloe's actions, but a much larger part of me felt a sense of rightness. Boundaries had been drawn, and consequences, for once, had been delivered. Later, as the party was winding down, Liam and I slipped out onto a stone balcony overlooking the moonlit gardens. The cool night air was a welcome relief. We stood in silence for a few moments, simply holding each other, listening to the muffled sounds of the celebration behind us. "Do you think she'll ever understand what she did?" I asked softly. Not because I needed an answer, but just to voice the thought. Liam was quiet for a moment, his gaze on the distant stars. "Honestly, I don't know," he said, his voice tinged with a weariness that went beyond the long day. "Maybe not, but that's not our problem anymore, Grace. Our problem is us, our life, protecting what we have. Tonight, you showed me how we do that. You didn't just get angry, you stood up for us. You reminded everyone, including me, what a marriage is really about." He turned to face me, taking both of my hands in his. "It's not about who came first. It's about who you choose to put first every day for the rest of your life. And I choose you." He sealed that promise with a kiss under the stars, and I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that we were going to be more than okay. We were going to be magnificent. We had faced our first trial not as individuals, but as an unbreakable unit. This story is about more than just a dramatic wedding. It's a reminder that true partnership isn't about one person leading or protecting the other. It's about standing together, shoulder to shoulder, and creating a space of love and respect that no one else can tear down. It's about finding your voice, not to shout, but to speak your truth with a clarity and courage that silences all doubt. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs a message of hope.